Hello, everyone. I'm Sheriff Paul Laney, the retired sheriff in Cass County, North Dakota, and the current vice president of national sales here at TurnKey Corrections, and you are listening to Jail Talk. My partner in crime, Lauren, was recently gotten married, and she is off doing some other assignments here at TurnKey. We're going to see a little bit less of her on Jail Talk, but she'll be popping in periodically to join me whenever she can. And we want to wish her the absolute congratulations she and her husband deserve. We know that how excited they are, and we wish them the best as they start their new life together. And with that being said, today I got a really cool guest here with me today. Not only is he a really good friend, he's been a fellow law enforcement officer for years. He's also the president of TurnKey Corrections and my boss. So we are going to visit today with Tom Graham, the president of TurnKey Corrections, who's got a very interesting background on his route, how he got here, and with what he's doing now. We're going to talk a little bit about what he's seen over the years and what he sees coming down the pike for you in the jail environment from his position, both with his experience and in his position leading a technology company. So, Tom, welcome to Jail Talk. It's good to have you on the show.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate being here. And what a great opportunity to talk about our industry.
Talking about our industry, that's exactly it. There's so much happening out there right now. And as I said, you didn't start out in the technology industry. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about your background, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what you've seen in that background.
Sure. I had 27 years in corrections in Oregon. I actually started with the Oregon Department of Corrections, working at a maximum security prison, then later at a minimum security. Worked for them a little over a year and made the decision that I wanted to work for a sheriff's office, so I started applying. I ended up in Lincoln County, Oregon in 1992. Had the opportunity to walk in the door when they launched their brand new jail, literally the day of, and spent the rest of my career there. It was a great opportunity. I have to say I worked with some exceptional people, exceptional leadership, and that created some opportunities for me as I moved through my career. In 1999, I promoted to sergeant, a position I held until I retired in 2017. And, really my focus with the jail was bringing in technologies or innovations that assist us in being more efficient with what we had and providing services to the inmates that were there.
It's interesting you talk about law enforcement. I'm going to just diverse back for a second here. And when Tom and I first met, you had been at TurnKey Corrections about 3 weeks, and I was the keynote speaker here for the users conference in 2017. And Tom had picked me up at the hotel and brought me over here, and we were getting a tour, and we were talking about his background and all that. Turns out we have a tie. I mean, this great big country with all the law enforcement officers out there. What was our tie?
Lieutenant Jamie Russell. She was my boss for many, many years, and again, one of those great leaders. And she, I believe, was a classmate of yours at the FBI Academy, correct?
She was. Jamie and I had attended the FBI National Academy together. We were classmates for the entire 10 weeks and got to be really good friends during that, and stayed in touch over the years. And then the next day, her former sergeant is standing here at TurnKey Corrections in River Falls, Wisconsin. So, we talk about it being a small world. Well, it's an even smaller law enforcement world.
It is completely.
As we found that. So, your years of service, you did 26 years at Lincoln County. You did a year in a state prison or federal prison?
State prison,
correct. Yeah. And, what in that time frame, from the beginning of your career until you retired in 2017, was the biggest changes you saw? Thinking back to 1991, 1992, and then walking out the jail in September, August, September of 2017. What would you say were some of the biggest changes you saw over those years?
Well, I'll break that into two answers. One is psychology and one is technology. All through my career, we were challenged with doing things differently because we love to do things the same way forever because we feel like they're tried and tested. And yet, when we're not adapting, we're not changing, right?
In my leadership course that I present, one of the things I talk about is in the law enforcement realm, the corrections world, the dispatch world, the fire. I mean, anything to do with, our people hate two things: change and the way things are.
Exactly.
And so we end up a lot of times just having to stay on that course, and pretty soon we start realizing that, we're pretty antiquated here. We need to think outside the box.
I used to say that corrections was always about 20 years behind everything else. And we did things for reasons, right? And so because of that psychology, and that was the challenge and the drive every day of my career. But because of that, we didn't embrace technology very openly or new ways of doing things. So those were the two things throughout my career that were consistent. Those were, I won't say I'm battling them, but they were considerations as I looked at things to bring into our facility. So,
do you think the idea that when we started going to more of the pod style structure, direct supervision, that type of stuff versus the old linear style jails, all that, do you think that forced some of that change?
well, it absolutely did, because direct supervision obviously puts staff out there with inmates in well, I'll say a very busy working environment. And I'll use an example where I came from. We had a housing unit that at one point held up to 70 inmates, and we had one staff member in there dealing with these people day in and day out. If you think of 70 people with 70 questions that the person has to answer in a 2-hour period, it was virtually impossible. That's where technology had to happen. There had to be a mechanism in which inmates in custody could take the time to submit a request for information and have that answered, and it didn't need to be that person sitting there at the desk. That person was there to do security. This is where technology made a difference.
Excellent, excellent. So, we talk about that time frame, and I think that's what I saw too during my time frame. I started out my law enforcement career as a police officer, and I wore blue for 18 years, and I put a lot of people in jail. But I'd never ever run one or never had to look at things from the opposite side of that. And where I was from, same thing. We had the old linear style jail from the late 1800s, early 1900s that had been built on and built on and built on and built on, and pretty soon you just couldn't do a lot with it anymore. And then in 2002 they opened the new Cass County Jail, so we're at the 20-year mark here now there as well. And went to that direct supervision philosophy. And I remember coming in there just thinking, wow, what a difference, and what a different atmosphere. Well, then I run for sheriff in 2006. I get elected. Now I'm in charge of a jail of 352 beds, and you really start realizing how efficient you need to be. Your jail is your biggest liability as a sheriff. Your jail has the kind of the craziest things that happen. You've got everything from the medical situations to violent offenders to the keep separates to everything that has to happen. And I think that was one of the things that I noticed too as I took over as sheriff, is we had to start working smarter and not harder. And as time went on, we were always trying to find ways to streamline how we did things.
Yeah, and it's interesting, talking about the direct supervision model. I mean, when I started in my career, that was really kind of emerging. I came from an environment in the prison where it was direct supervision, and that's one of the reasons I actually went to work for Lincoln County, because I had experience with that. But look, today, we're starting to drift away from that model already because of staffing considerations, right, budgets, and those types of things. And so, again, we're continuing to evolve past that. So what is the technology that's going to help keep staff and inmates safe in a facility where they may not be having constant contact with them?
Exactly. Well, one of the things we talk about that time frame and what we both saw, coming in, we're kind of getting to be the relics of the profession. We both left the profession, we retired. We're both working for a technology company. So instead of looking backwards, what do you see as being the biggest impact of law enforcement in jail, say in the coming next 5 to 10 years?
A couple things come to my mind right off the bat, and that is, one, embracing that change that's happening. It's always happening, and right now it really has to do around prison reform, incarceration, and connection with the community. We've had to embrace some things over the last 2 decades, which is communication with family and friends. In the old days, it was writing a letter and making a phone call. Today, we provide video visitation, email, SMS, picture mail, all these different things that we can do as a company to better connect them with their family and friends, and that's essential. And all of those things are now, I want to use the word scrutiny, but they're being evaluated to see if they're useful tools and if we're providing them at a reasonable service. As we move into the future in corrections, we're going to be faced with more of that connection with the community. And I think the challenge that, again, as the corrections side of it, like you said, change is always hard for us. But I think we're going to see that inmates are going to be allowed to have more access. Already we're seeing our customer base reach out to us and ask for limited web access to specific materials, right? I think we're going to see more education become a requirement within the system. I just feel like there's more technology out there that the average person is using on the street, and it's going to naturally evolve into the correctional setting. And how we embrace that and how we use it and how we do the risk assessment on how we use it is going to be what's, I think, the challenge for us. We're adapting those technologies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think as we look at across the country, the sweeping reforms that are happening there, that train has left the station. And I know there's still some out there that think, we don't need to change anything. And I think any of us that have worked in the profession realize there's a lot that we have to change. We have to look in the mirror, fix some things. We have to look at, how we do not have the staff numbers we used to have. I mean, law enforcement nationwide is struggling. So again, we have to look at those alternatives. A few weeks ago on the show here, we had Sheriff Chris Swanson when we were down at NSA for the summer conference talking about the Ignite program and things like that, where we're trying to invest more in our inmates and what kind of a neighbor are we turning out, of our jails and that type of stuff. And I think that's one thing. Do you see those kind of programs and that type of stuff having whether it's the Ignite programs or, the different programming that you see investing in the inmates while they're there to turn out a better person? Do you see that having significant impact compared to what you saw in the 90s?
Yes, I do. And I think that the challenge there goes to the public because those things require a level of funding. And I will say that the absolute truth in correction is for decades, we've embraced the idea that we need to be providing those services. It is the one time that we can have meaningful impact on a person. If they're in, I use the captive audience.
Captive audience,
right,
absolutely.
Yeah. And having participated in programs at our facility for years, we saw the benefits of that. And I always kind of joked around, give us $1 million extra a year and we'll change the dynamics of crime in our county in 10 years. It's investing in that. I think at some point as a country, we're going to have to wholeheartedly embrace that. It's not, that we shouldn't have jails, because we should. But what do we do with the people who are in custody and how are we funding it? I think that's the biggest challenge facing us.
Absolutely. I think for a long time, jails used to be like this stark secret in the community. Over there, like in my case, over there on 34th Street South in Fargo, we just got to pretend that giant facility isn't there because that's where they house inmates, that type of stuff. And I actually, there, of course, you got some of the old archaic thinkers up there, and I'll say that because I think it's archaic thinking. Lock them up and throw away the key. Yeah. I would say 95% of the inmates that I had, especially at the county level, are bad decision makers, not bad people. And I think if you take the time to provide them with tools, provide them with resources, provide them with opportunities, you're going to see a response. Again, it goes back to what Sheriff McFadden says in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. What kind of neighbor do you want me to return to your community? Because they're going to come back to your community. If they're doing 10 days on a DUI, like a second DUI, well, how do we fix that and how do we make them become a productive member? How do we give them tools so they can go out and get a job and provide that? And I think as a community, we need to come together as that, wherever community you're at, and look at things from a different perspective. And I think, one, you'll see your inmate population go down. I think you'll see your recidivism go down. And I think those are the types of things that across this country, we need to start taking a good hard look at the people part of what we do and invest in the people. And somebody would say, oh, that's just, super liberal thinking. No, I think it's smart thinking.
It is smart thinking.
It's not liberal or conservative. It's about how do we serve our public best? And what we how do we give back? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're not talking about a handout. You're talking about a hand helping someone up,
absolutely,
right? You're lifting someone up, and if we don't embrace that, we'll get the same thing over and over again, right?
Exactly.
Expecting the same results, right? The bottom line is that most of our jails hold people for a very, very short period of time. Jails are necessary. They're an essential piece of our criminal justice system. Certain people do need to be incarcerated at periods in their life.
Absolutely.
And there's no moving away from that. Yes, we would like to reduce our inmate population across the country. We can try to do that through decriminalization, but I don't think that's panning out very well for a number of entities already. So at the end of the day, what can we do with that average 7 to 10 day stay with someone? Right. How can we impact them? Well, I always tell people in corrections, this is what's going to mean something in your career. One day, one moment, one person, you're going to say that one thing that will have some sort of profound impact on them. They may not change today, they may not change tomorrow, but as they progress through life, those words will echo in their heads and they will start to make course corrections. And why can't we be making those types of statements every day to the people that are in our custody? And we also have to be careful not to lump everything into one problem. Right now, we hear a lot about mental health. Everything's a mental health issue, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, mental health is a component of it. There is substance abuse. There is cognitive behavioral issues. There's all the things that go into leading someone to make that bad decision you were talking about. So I think that's the challenge, is to look at it from a global view, not a single view.
Absolutely. There's the big kind of wave out there, which at least seemed to be gaining some momentum. But I think it's slowly started out. Is that defund the police movement? Now that's about the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Is let's give our people a lesser ability to protect our communities. I think if you can invest more in your police, you would start finding these kind of things happen where we can invest in more programs, we can invest in more things that go on, whether it's inside the jail or it's working with the kids in the schools or it's just engaging with the public. I think we need to invest more into our public service so that we can do a lot more and then engage the community in all aspects, from your mental health services, from your addiction services, from your training services, from your schools. And if everybody works together, I think we can make a difference within our communities and see less inmates coming back through the doors.
I absolutely think so, and I think part of it is having vision. We sometimes just lack vision. We're so caught up in the now, right? We're investing a lot of our resources into the now.
Right.
And in reality, in a community, and I will argue, this was taught to me a long time ago by a very wise sheriff, that honestly, if a county or a city or a state makes investment in law enforcement and education, the problems they feel today will start to fade in a very short period of time over time. Because if you have, strong public safety, your community is going to grow and expand and be vibrant and safe, and people are going to want to move there. And with that, then you have a strong educational system. You're going to be teaching children not just the math, but how to grow in a society. It's going to be a positive experience. You have a community like that, these problems we talk about today will start to become less and less. They will never go away, but they'll be less and less. And at some point, let's say a decade down the road, you're actually equipped to handle that. Now your mental health division isn't overran, right? Your unemployment isn't overran. And so it's stepping back. What can we do with law enforcement and education to change our community?
Amen. I think, I think across this country, if more and more embrace that and more open their minds to kind of accept that, I think we will start seeing some noticeable change across the country. So with that, let's talk a little bit more about kind of that technology part of it. So at our users conference a couple weeks ago, you had a breakout session where you moderated a session that talked about technology in the future, both from our perspective, and then we had some breakout groups that talking about the impact of technology and the types of things that we're going to see. What do you see as the biggest technological impact to the jail world, say, in the next 5 years?
Well, current technology in jail involves a telephone, now a kiosk. There aren't too many jails without a kiosk in it.
Right.
We're moving towards a more mobile platform, so inmates having tablets or mobile devices in their hands that allows them to work through a closed system and access information. I think we're going to see that continue to evolve, because now we're giving someone in custody more access to information that we can control, right?
Right.
And so I'll use an example. Right now, typically an inmate goes back to their cell. That's just downtime. Unless they like to read, that is a lot of time in your space in your head, right? And honestly, I've seen a lot of things go south in cells versus day rooms, right? So if we're able to incorporate technology into their actual housing area, their cell, then they have the opportunity to take that downtime and do something productive with it. And I feel like we're evolving in that direction now with these mobile devices. They run off Wi-Fi. We can restrict the access they get, but it's an opportunity for us to take a collection of what's out there and give them more time with it. An idle mind will seek out knowledge, believe it or not.
And sometimes that knowledge is productive, and if you get that idle mind that starts seeking out the unproductive, why would we not structure that environment so that it's the productive? You look at the programs, I brought up Ignite earlier. I walked into the Genesee County facility when I was there, and I walked into the women's dorm, and I could have heard a pin drop.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'd ever heard that before in any pod, and in any situation like that, because they were all engaged in their Chromebooks. They were all studying and learning and developing. And when I got a chance to visit with one of the inmates, she was like, "This is the best thing that's ever happened. I just don't have to sit around and think about what I've lost anymore." I get to make myself better and make myself a better person. And most human beings want to become, good people. Like you said, we know there are those inmates that need to spend the rest of their life behind jail, and we need to always make sure there's room at the inn for those people. But the other, say 95%, and that's just a number I pull off the top of my head, that want to learn, want to invest. And now as communities, we're starting to provide the opportunities to do that. We're starting to provide the technology to do that. And I thought it was really interesting, some of the things we heard from the jail administrators and some of the feedback we got during the users conference and where they thought it was going as well.
Well, I feel strongly that we have to move in that direction. And again, going back to the staffing model, we're not going to get big increases in our funding to hire more staff. We're not going to be able to hire teachers. Certainly not getting able to hire more counselors. In fact, this defund movement is the counter to that.
Exactly.
So technology, one tablet can replace a number of those positions, right? And as those inmates, as you described, are engaged in that, they become manageable to themselves first, right? And then to the staff. And now the staff has some time to have interaction with them and assist them as they go on that journey. Because if your whole time is spent defusing situations in the jail, you're not in an education mode, you're in a defensive mode, right? And that's, I think that as a facility, we want to get those things in there. And honestly, it's probably going to be the most cost-effective way for a facility to increase the access to those types of services.
Right. Well, I think excellent information, and a lot of you out there, give us some feedback too on what you're seeing and what you're thinking out there. It's a very, very ever-changing correctional environment out there, and right now, the people that listen to our show, you're living it, eating it, breathing it every single day. And if I would love to get some feedback from you all to me on also what you're seeing out there and what direction you're seeing it go. And not only just from having come from that career, but we as a company who are trying to help make things better out in those environments. I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say. So, well, my dear friend and my president and my boss, we are coming to the end of our show. Do you have any final words for our listeners?
Well, I think for the partners we have out there and the partners to be and the partners we want, here's the simple thing. It's all about risk management and assessment. At the end of the day, you have to look at something and go, is this the right change for my facility? And I'll use this example. I was actually a speaker at a TurnKey conference many years ago prior to coming to work here, and I was discussing the idea of email and SMS for inmates. The tension in that room was rather thick. Because it was not something that we were embracing, right? There's no way I'm going to give an inmate more access. They're going to contact the victims. They're going to do all these things. There are very few of our partners out there that do not embrace those technologies today. So the challenge is when something new comes before you, do that risk assessment and ask yourself, yep, there are challenges there, but where would this take me next? What is it going to do for my inmate? What is it going to do to reduce my liability? How is it going to help my staff safety? And then take a deep, hard look at it.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Tom, like I said, has 27 years of history and background. Any of you out there, that's one of the reasons we do this show is to kind of bring us all together and to help, spur conversations and spur solutions. And as we've said, our owner of our company wants JailTalk to be a solution-based thing for our listeners out there. Tom's right here. Give him a call anytime. Call TurnKey. You can pick at his brain from any aspect of that, and I think you'll find his knowledge base is there, and we all love to give back and love to help our profession. So I hope you get some calls, and I hope you get some people wanting to talk to you further about some of your ideas.
Always open to it.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on. I know how crazy your life is around here. I get to watch you run around this since you got your promotion to president. We were fellow vice presidents together, and he got promoted to president, and I've watched your life change immensely. You're a busy, busy man. So on behalf of JailTalk, we appreciate you coming down to the studio, getting a chance to talk to us, kind of sharing your knowledge and your experience with our listeners. And I'd love to have you back again in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on here, and I love this topic. I'll talk about it all day.
You will. I do know that. You do love your corrections world. So with that, again, thank you very much. So you've been listening to JailTalk, and if you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up, give us a like. Follow us on Instagram at JailTalk Podcast, or email us because I want some feedback. I would love to get some feedback from you. Email us at jailtalkpodcast@gmail.com. You have been listening to JailTalk. I'm retired Sheriff Paul Laney, and I will see you next time.